Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dr. John Michael Salvato, and you're watching Inner Alchemy, the science of spiritual living. We're glad to have you guys join us. And if you would, if you're watching for the first time, please be part of the conversation. At the end of our presentation today, this program is a little bit different from for those who've watched our Wednesday afternoon program, The Brew, which is a talk show and is interactive throughout the entire program. Our program for Inner Alchemy is actually more of an opportunity for us to share ideas with you, kind of a teaching platform and a teaching program. And it gives us the opportunity to share some ideas with you that we hope will become the sort of the springboard for your own investigation, your own experiential learning process. And so we ask that if you have any comments that you can go ahead and type those during the program, but we'll address them at the end of the show. And if you happen to be watching this on our rebroadcast, feel free to ask questions as well, because we continue to answer those questions at the end. Now, we also ask that if you would please consider giving us a like and sharing this with folks that you know who might be interested in the alchemy of spiritual living. And so today I'm really excited. We've got a great show planned for us for this program, as well as a program that's coming tomorrow that I'm very excited about, in which one of our guests, who was on a previous broadcast of The Brew, Richard Levy, will be back with us again to talk about and really expand on that idea of sacred mythos and how our stories and legends play into our spiritual practice. So that will be tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. You'll be able to see it right here at the same place that you're watching this broadcast. And I really encourage you guys to tune in, because that's something that I'm really looking forward to myself, and I think we'll all find it very interesting. So today we're going to begin a 7-part series on the Inner Alchemy program on the 7 Hermetic principles. And these are the principles that were introduced in the Kybalion, but are actually part of that perennialist school of wisdom, wisdom teaching, if you will, which is at the core of everything that we do as practitioners of metaphysics, esoteric arts, witchcraft, shamanic work. It's all part and parcel. And I'm hoping that as you watch the program today, you'll begin to understand a little better how that comes to play. This is also, with full disclosure here, an opportunity for us to test how easily or not easily it is to run a PowerPoint presentation at the same time as one of these broadcasts. So if the voiceover is choppy, just please know that I will go ahead and do another version of this, and then Richard Levy and I will have some scrambling to do before tomorrow's show. We may actually just have to reschedule it if the PowerPoint doesn't work. But I think I've worked out all of the bugs, and think that I have a pretty good idea of where we need to go in order to make this really something useful for you guys. So let me go ahead right now and see if I can bring this up the right way. We will go solo here. All right, this should work. So here goes nothing, guys. Today we're going to be talking about the 7 Hermetic principles. And the reason that this is so critical, a point I think for us to understand, especially for those folks who are just beginning to explore metaphysics and witchcraft and pagan spiritual practices. The 7 spiritual principles will be handled one each week for the next 7 weeks. Part 1 is the principle of mentalism. Now, we're going to talk about something that we call the universal mind. It's about exploring 2 really basic, really fundamental questions. The first is, what is the subatomic stuff that the universe is made of? The whole concept of looking deeper beneath the layer of archetypes, beneath the layer of mythos and legends and our individual traditions. What is it that stuff is manifest from? And this is an important question for us to ask as pagan practitioners, because if we're practicing the craft, we're practicing the craft to accomplish something, whether it's a personal revelation, a personal development, or manifesting something in our physical experience. It is all about being able to create. And if we don't know what the stuff is that creation is made of, then how are we going to effectively create? This is about taking things beyond the level of fanboy, fangirl, Sabrina on television, or American Horror Story. And the second question goes hand in hand with that, and that is, at the quantum level, can we adopt a framework of reference to explain the existence of the phenomenal and noumenal worlds? So let's get started by unpacking a little bit about this concept of the universal mind. Within the Kybalion, we first read that all substantial reality, that is to say, the outward manifestations, phenomena, and appearances that we refer to as the material universe, is comprised of the same spirit. Now, this spirit is described as unknowable and undefinable. It was neither created nor can it be destroyed. It is referred to in the ancient text as the universal, infinite, living mind. Now, in the postmodern world, this is what we refer to when we talk about something that can neither be created or destroyed, but which simply changes form. And what is that? It's energy. You've all heard us talk on previous programs about how energy isn't created, energy isn't destroyed. It just changes form. That's why we understand and recognize that the ancestors are with us in our work, because they no longer exist on the physical plane, but that energy that we identify with, that we connect with, simply changed forms and is able to be with us universally. So the idea that empty space can have an intrinsic energy associated to it, and that there's no such thing as a vacuum, ultimately led to the discovery of dark energy, which Albert Einstein referred to as zero-point energy. Now, this idea of zero-point energy can probably best be described as that vast, unquantifiable, indestructible reservoir of dark matter or dark energy from which all manifest phenomena is created. It's the mother of all atomic structure. It's what exists below the subatomic level. It's the birther of the cosmos. Albert Einstein called this zero-point energy. That's something that really works well for me, but it can be referred to by many other terms. It can be referred to as spirit. It can be referred to as source. It can be referred to as the god or goddess. It can be referred to simply as the stuff that the Big Bang was made of. In the Kybalion, we read that the universe is simply a mental creation, which exists in the universal mind. Now think about that for a minute and what they're saying. The universe is simply a mental creation which exists in the universal mind. If it's a mental creation, in other words, the universe or the cosmos is a thought. And that's what we're going to be unpacking today. Now, there is a movement throughout the world, predominantly in the United States, which developed in the 19th century called the New Thought movement. It's considered by many to have been derived from the unpublished writings of Phineas Quimby, who learned about the power of the mind to heal through hypnosis when he watched a man by the name of Charles Poyen do his work in hypnotic healing. This concept was further expanded as the great and incredible Neville Goddard, a teacher of New Thought who really inspires a lot of my own work, who challenged the belief that the Bible was based on historical fact and taught that manifesting desire was possible through the principle of thought, or what we might call affirmative prayer. Now, Neville couched a lot of his teaching in sort of this biblical language, in the ideas of God and the ideas of prayer. But he was talking about the principle of thought. And another great teacher who had a tremendous influence on me is Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science and the author of The Science of Mind. And I highly recommend that text for those who are trying to make a transition from the Abrahamic traditions into New Thought or metaphysics, witchcraft. It's a really good way to kind of bridge that. It was difficult for me as a non-theist to use that text, predominantly, because the terms like God and terms like the entire vernacular of biblical literature aren't something that I relate to very well. But if you're coming from an Abrahamic tradition, that may be something that you find useful. Dr. Holmes formulated a 5-step process for intentional creation, which we call spiritual mind treatment. And we're going to have a special guest who will be on the show on the 13th. He will be on the Brew with us, with myself and Raphael Ray. And he will be talking a little bit about this 5-step process for intentional creation and understanding what spellcrafting really is. Now, let's tie that new thought concept into the ancient and unnamed path, because it's no secret that this wisdom was derived from older ancient texts, the Theosophical Society's ideas, Rudolf Steiner, and the ancient principles of the Vedic religions, as well as other ancient traditions. So if we examine this idea more closely, it should resonate with practitioners of witchcraft, magic, alchemy, and other esoteric practices. The process of conscious creation or manifestation of phenomena was known up to be among the most fundamental aspects of mastery within the craft of the wise. So no matter what tradition you come from, whether it's a shamanic tradition, one of the ancient animist traditions like Bon in Tibet, or whether it's a more traditional, witchcraft or Wiccan or shamanic practice, the idea that the process of conscious creation and manifestation of phenomena is one of the fundamental aspects that actually makes one a practitioner of magic. So let's talk about what that means. One of the things that many witches aspire to do is to be able to trigger a magical effect on a person, a situation, an object in their experience. Now, they use incantations or spells to do that. And an incantation is a magical formula intended to trigger an effect on a person, situation, or object. And that formula can be spoken. That formula can be sung or chanted. It can be done in rhyme or in regular prose. And an incantation can also be performed during ceremonial rituals or prayers to bring about another effect. And other words that are synonymous with incantation are spells, charms, esoteric commands. So let's look at what those actually are. If the spell is the spoken word that brings about this manifestation, what precedes the spoken word? Well, before you and I can speak anything, we have to first think. And in terms of magical manifestation, that means we have to set our intention. We have to give energy to the words we're about to speak. Now, this is basic spellcraft for those who practice in the magical traditions. But I want you to think about the fact that this also applies to every moment of your life, every word that you speak. So before you speak, you should be deliberate. You should be intentional. You should recognize that your words are going to give energy to creation. Now, this happens on several levels. It happens on the metaphysical level, the noumenal level. It happens as well on the physiological level. Your prefrontal cortex hears and listens to everything you speak, every word you read, everything that is put in, all of the input, and it accepts those things as true. That's why the concept of positive affirmations work, because you begin to impress upon the prefrontal cortex that something is reality, and the mind, being connected to the universal mind, begins to set things up in your experience to make that manifest, because it's already true if you've decided so. Now, this is something that witches and practitioners do all the time and should be doing mindfully. And as I said, we should be doing this whether we are chanting or speaking a spell, whether we're working with puppets or some sort of candle work, some sort of color magic, some sort of crystal magic. But we should also be doing this when we're sitting at a traffic light and wishing that traffic would move more quickly, when we are waking up in the morning and setting our intention for the day. So whether you're initiated into a particular tradition, learned the craft from your hereditary elders, picked up a book, or intuitively began to practice, or by any other way were initiated or introduced to this practice, you are harnessing the power of words, born from intentionality or thought, every time you cast a spell, worked a ritual, or offered a prayer. And again, that is regardless of whether you were initiated into a particular tradition, whether you accept witchcraft and magic to be true or not. Every time you speak, you're bringing something into manifestation. So let me ask you, what if the ancient texts from multiple traditions, going back as many as 5,000 years, got it right? What if the phenomenal and noumenal universes were entirely made up of a single unquantifiable dark matter, as Einstein observed and called zero-point energy? And what if that zero-point energy was what New Thought teachers called thought or universal mind? What if the secret to a fruitful and rich practice of the craft wasn't in the nonsensical, ego-driven fanboy, fangirl bullshit about lineage and heredity, all of the other nonsense that we derive from television programs, fictional stories, cartoons, myths, and legends? What if all of the secret had nothing to do with the legends that we were told or that we've accepted from fictional accounts, and instead that secret was to just shut the fuck up and go to work on mastering our own minds? Recognizing that whether we learn the craft from heredity, or we learn the craft from a friend, or we learn the craft from a stranger or a book, learning the intrinsic energy between the cycle of the seasons, connecting us with nature, and our experiences in life, cultivating the wisdom of calm abiding and knowing that our thoughts create our experiences. What if that was the secret to being able to really grow and cultivate the craft of the wise in our lives? See, we have to begin by sifting through the chaotic data. Out of chaos comes regeneration. So it's okay that a lot of these erroneous beliefs might have made their way into our practice. They might have made our way into our personalities, and they've certainly, if you don't believe me, have made their way into Facebook groups in the metaphysical and witchcraft circles. You'll see people all the time who claim that they have these amazing powers because they're a hereditary witch, or they have these amazing powers because they're in the Gardinian lineage, or this one's lineage, or that one's. The birth of new ideas, the mastery of our innate power, has never depended on these things. It doesn't depend on heredity. It doesn't depend on hierarchy, religious superstition, period costume, how pretty your outfit looks, or whether you have a witch's hat. It doesn't depend on lineage or the origin of your tradition. Your birthright is the same as every other being on the planet, both animate and inanimate. Your birthright is a magical birthright. So until you master the first principle of Hermetics, you're not practicing magic. You're playing, you're acting, going through the motions. So what I want to challenge you to do, and then we're going to talk about this a little bit for anyone who might be watching, is I want you not to accept what I've just shared with you. I want to challenge you to watch this program again and again, and rely not on the message of the teacher, but I mean, rely on the message of the teacher, not on my personality. Rely on the meaning, not just the words. Rely on the real meaning, not just the first one that comes to mind, and rely on your wisdom, not on your ordinary judgmental mind. These are, or what's called the four reliances in Buddhism, attributed to Gautama Buddha, who wanted to make sure that those who are endeavoring to develop, to cultivate their spiritual practice, do so based on experiential wisdom. Put everything you hear to the test. When somebody tells you that you can or can't do something, test it. See if this is true. See if the things that I shared with you in this program are true. And then make your own decisions. You see, this is about a journey of insight, wisdom, and compassion. That's the purpose of this show. It's the purpose of everything that we do. Now, let me see if I can turn off the, hopefully that slideshow was working. I hope that the slides, if somebody could tell me, Richard, were the slides showing up? I'm going to go ahead and take that out. Okay. I do not see. I have no way of actually knowing. I hope that the slides were working. If not, that was really boring to sit and look at the lunar cycle for the month of March. But the artwork in the middle by Mr. Spears was definitely at least something to cast your eyes upon. And yes, thank you, Richard. The slides were good. Okay, fantastic. I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to know that. Happy to know, how do we make those go away? Hide current comment. Happy to know that the slides were helpful. Happy to know that you enjoyed the show. If you're watching this on the rebroadcast, I want to ask again, if you wouldn't mind sharing this with others. Keep in mind that our broadcasts are also archived at www.inneralchemy.online. And we really appreciate your participation. We appreciate your questions and comments, and we appreciate the discussion that takes place. See, again, you do not have to accept or believe anything that we said in any of our shows. The idea here is to spark a conversation, and I hope that you guys will bring more interaction, more of an experiential process to these programs that we share with you guys every week. And as we do at the end of every program, I want to encourage you to stay in the moment, to be grateful for what you've got, and recognize that this innate power is your birthright. Don't let anyone tell you that you can or can't do things the way that feels right for you. I want to encourage you to be on here tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 8 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, and it is noon Pacific Time. Be here so that you can actually deepen your understanding of our sacred stories. I have a strong feeling that what Richard Levy is going to share with us tomorrow is going to help us to understand how those sacred stories inform us, how they become part of who we are, and how they represent the archetypes that are indwelling. And before I jump off, I just think this is too good of a comment to not to end on. We have another comment here from Richard, who says this reminded him of a story. The letter Bet is the first letter in the alphabet in the Bible through Aleph, though Aleph comes first. Aleph explained to God, who told Aleph that they were the breath before the word. that this is something that I think Richard will expand on tomorrow. But I remember very vividly my teacher telling me that it was the space between the breath that we experienced that power. It was that space, that silence. And when we become silent, when we bring gratitude to the moment, recognizing that if we can't be happy with what we have right now, we're not going to be any happier with more. In that silence comes wisdom. In that silence is profound compassion. But most of all, in that silence is profound power. And I hope that you find that power. I hope that you cultivate that power, and that you can let go of the things that no longer serve you. This is a tremendous time for us as a planet. This is a tremendous time for us as a people, and an opportunity for us to let go of the things that no longer serve us and begin cultivating those things which increase our vibration, increase our awareness, and increase our ability to express love in this world. So thanks for being here, guys. I look forward to seeing you again, and we'll look forward to you being with us tomorrow afternoon for Richard Levy's broadcast as well. Until then, this is Dr. John Michael Salvato thanking you and wishing you well. Namaste.